Space Museum. I'm Marquette, and we're so glad you're with us to stay curious today with Terry White, who was a manager of the orbital processing facility of the shuttle's garage. And we're kicking off again another episode of the Shuttle Garage with Terry White. How you doing, Brady?
I'm doing good.
Good. Good to see you today. We've got a great little show together today where Terry's going to talk about the beginning of the OPFs, as they call them, one of these acronyms that I think's one of the, that you learn around this museum real quick. You learn the VAB, Vehicle Assembly Building, and then you learn the shuttle garages, the OPF. This is number 2 behind us here, Terry.
Yes.
And we didn't figure out what orbiter's in there, but you're going to tell us in a little bit what stage of the processing this orbiter is in. And the big hint is the big hose is coming off of it. So we're going to move my microphone there. Marty Winkle, our co-producer, and run our Streamlabs computer program here. He's been with me for 2.5 years. We're up to over 620 episodes of Stay Curious. And we're very proud and happy to have Terry part of our program once a month. Terry, how you been?
I'm doing good.
Yep. Been seeing the family in Louisiana, is it?
And, yep. Got 3 grandkids out there, so
yeah. You've
good
been
reason to go.
Keeping the roads hot before they go back to school, huh?
Yeah. Yep.
So how's the trip down the across I-10 and stuff lately?
Yeah, that's it. It's just I-10 all the way to almost to their house. So
hot and humid, huh?
Yep.
Good. Well, good. Well, you do. He's got a long legacy. Terry does. A lot of people, of course, know the guy with the handlebar mustache, distinctive trait. And Terry was just not a wonderful decorated manager, but you also did a lot of tours for VIPs, right?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Such as name a few that you gave tours to.
Well, one of them was a guy by the name of Neil Armstrong.
Really? He needed a tour?
Well, no. Him and Bob Crippen were bringing a bunch of admirals and captains that they had served time with in the Navy, and they wanted someone just to assist them to help answer some of the questions that they may not be able to answer, because they know about what goes on in space and the training in that, but they don't necessarily know what goes on in the garage. So I felt privileged to go with them. I'd met Mr. Armstrong before, and I'd met Bob Crippen quite a few times. So, yeah, but there were presidents, vice presidents, heads of states from other countries, a lot of actors, actresses, sports stars.
Wow. And the whole show to stay curious about later on, it sounds like.
And they were really good about inviting the military. So a lot of people from the military showed up and got to escort them around and answer questions. And then the Blue Angels and the Thunderbirds, they were just in awe of looking at the orbiter when they got there. So.
Well, Terry's a man that can take the complexity of this orbiter and the whole stack of the external tank and SRBs, the solid rocket motors, and make it sound simple. What presidents or U.S. presidents you have the privilege?
Well, Obama was the last one that I did, but before that it was Clinton was here, and then Vice President Cheney was here with his family and that. So yeah.
Good. Well, we'll do a Stay Curious about some of the dignitaries and being involved with the VIPs there. And Marty, if you have Terry's name racked up for our bottom thing, there you go. We want to get me to shut up and you to talk, because we know that you Stay Curious fans out there like Dave Stange and Larry Pushker want to hear this man tell some wonderful tales about the garages of the shuttle. Before we do that, Terry, we want to just let everybody know that the shirts have been printed. I'm going to pick some up tomorrow and get them out in the mail hopefully later in this week. So you can order now, and we'll get into the shipping a little more frequently. But thank you for bearing with us 4 or 5 weeks while we got this cranked up. This is a fundraiser for the American Space Museum. We were closed 3 weeks. This helps offset some of our income we lost. But also, these are some cool shirts, Terry, by world-renowned artist Paul Callie and his son Chris.
Good.
And we will, hopefully I'll be wearing one tomorrow. Yeah, Marty?
Travis says get him a shirt.
Oh, your son Travis is watching. Where's he
All right.
at?
He's in Iraq. He's in
Hi,
Baghdad.
Travis.
Yeah.
We're glad to see you. Which one do you want, Travis? All three, says Dad. What size is Travis?
He should be a large, so.
We'll have one waiting for you when you come back in the States, young man. And thank you for your service to our country on his 4th tour in the Middle East, protecting our country. And I get goosebumps thinking about that, my friend. So, all right, Marty, we have a comment.
Yeah, William Whiting is asking, I've heard some astronauts say that each shuttle was slightly different. What was your experiences? If so, how were they different?
Well, let's kick it out there with that from William Whiting. He said that he's heard that each of the 5 orbiters had a little bit of a personality to them. So give us a kind of a thumbnail of that.
Basically, they were the same, but as we built each one, we did make changes to make them unique. But Columbia, being the first one built, was the heaviest in that, and one would think that Endeavour, being the last one built, would be the lightest, but no, Atlantis was slightly lighter than Endeavour was. But we did different modifications. Remember, it was a time period between when the first one flew, Columbia, and then when Challenger flew, so we learned some lessons with Columbia and made some improvements with Challenger. Then when we had the 2 of them flying, we made a lot of changes for Discovery. Not many between Discovery and Atlantis, but then there was a long period before Endeavour was built, so Endeavour had a lot more changes. And then periodically we would take the orbiters offline for major maintenance, and we would take them out of the flying routine for up to 2 years to do modifications, safety enhancements, and that. And so they were all a little bit unique, and you got to learn what their things were about them that was different from the others. And we like getting the same one back, which we didn't always, but back to the hangar. And if you'd got it ready for its last flight, it was nice to get it back and get it ready for its next flight.
So I did have a little bit of personality.
It did, yes. Yeah.
And we'll get into more of that. Thank you, William, for a great question like that. We're going to be talking all month about the shuttles of August. We've got Mr. Hugh Harris coming next Wednesday. And 9 shuttles in the month of August. Not that busy of a month, but you had 3 flights in the early 80s, 83, 84, 85. Of course, the first shuttle flew in April 12th, 1981. So you had 3 in August that were still, you're still taming the beast in a way.
Yes.
I like to say.
So, and they're all unique. Each flow, you're putting in a different payload, and you're doing different modifications. You have different issues, different problems that you have to resolve from one flight to the next. But it's a stressful, but it's still a unique and a great experience to have worked on the different orbiters.
Well, there we have the earliest one of August is 1984, launched August 30th. We have 2 launched August 30th, 41D. That was the maiden flight of Discovery. And then also August 30th is the anniversary of launching STS-8, the first night launch and landing that had the first African-American on, Guy Bluford, who flew 3 more times. So, and one Department of Defense mission up there in the upper right-hand corner, STS-28, that we talked a little bit about the DOD missions. And they tried to keep your technicians away from doing the job, you told me.
Yeah, they didn't want techs going up and being able to look into the payload bay. And I said, well, I'm sorry, but we have to do our work. So we had to curtain off the payload bay with a curtain that you couldn't see through.
Wow.
So that people couldn't look down into the payload, but yet you could pick up Air and Space magazine and find all you wanted to find out about the payload. So, but yeah, it was a unique environment dealing with the DoD missions.
Well, we'll talk about a whole bunch of stuff as we enjoy Terry White on Stay Curious once a month. And I'm looking forward to it. Today, Terry wanted to talk more about the birth and development of these orbital processing facilities. Marty Winkle, who I've told you many times, worked on the lunar module of the Grumman Apollo era, but he also was a launch processing service computer manager, Marty was. So he will be very familiar and use the magic arrow to point out what Terry's going to tell us about this scene right here.
Yeah. Well, looking over Mark's right shoulder, you'll see the towway. That connects to the runway, and that's where we would bring the orbiter after it lands into the processing facilities. Just above the arrow right there is Orbiter Processing Facility 1 and Orbiter Processing Facility 2. In the early days, that's all we had were 2 buildings. Then we realized that we couldn't get all the work done with multiple orbiters, shuffling them in and out of the 2 facilities. So then we built a third one. When we built it, it was to do major maintenance on the vehicles. We had been sending them back to California to do that. So NASA decided to build the Orbiter Maintenance and Refurbishment Facility. It had the same structure type that OPF 1 and 2 had, but it didn't have the ability to deservice an orbiter. In other words, make it safe after flight so people could get around it to work on it, get the payload out and the hazards off. So eventually we took OMRF offline and turned it into a full operational OPF. So it was renamed OPF 3. So we had 3 facilities to handle the fleet then of 4 vehicles.
All right. Which vehicle is yours parked here in the parking lot, Terry?
It's a little hard to tell in that picture. So
Okay. Well, that, of course, is the gigantic vehicle assembly building there, the largest one-story building still in the world. How many feet? 500 and some feet?
525 feet tall.
All right. 525 feet tall.
Yeah, the
That-
OPFs are only 160 feet, so that's why they look small compared to the
Wow. And
VAB.
they're still a big building.
Yes.
And of course, the VAB is the Devil's Tower, if you will, on our Space Coast around here. Everywhere you look, I love looking over my shoulder and seeing it. And I'm sure you do too, Terry. What does
Yeah,
that?
and-
You're
and it-
going
and
over a
it- and it-
causeway and
yeah.
you look.
Yeah, and you know, it tells you you're home. So
Yeah.
and it was designed, the VAB was designed for the Apollo to build the moon rockets and assemble them and then send them out to the pad. It was modified for the Space Shuttle, but the OPFs were close because we would roll the vehicle once we had it ready for flight and the boosters and the tank were ready. We would roll the orbiters out of the orbiter processing facility, take them over to the north side of the VAB and take them in there. And then now they would start their vertical processing. So far, since landing, they'd been processed horizontally. Now they go into the vertical processing and get mated to the external tank and the boosters.
Here's another picture from the bicentennial days. They already took down the exhibit where the big round areas are, but this is about 1977, 78. And we wanted to show this so you could see the runway, Marty, and the 2 OPFs in the left, 1 and 2 there.
Yeah. So post landing, and
That's the runway up
and
there.
getting it safe, then we would hook the orbiter up to a tug and tow it down that towway, down the highway, and then into the OPFs.
Okay, show where the OPFs are, Marty.
Yeah,
and Marty said he
and
has
in this
a comment.
picture, it was just OPF 1 and 2. OPF 3 didn't exist.
Okay, a comment, Marty?
Yep. Gotta go back. Just for the fun of it, that's my office.
Oh, that's your. I was going to ask you where you were. Yeah, okay, that's your office there. Okay, Marty, which one's your car in the parking lot there? I was going to go back to that picture.
I'm parked right there.
All right, Marty's parked right there. Okay, what year was that taken? You all think 1990s?
Probably, yes.
What was your building called, Marty?
PCC, Processing Control Center.
Processing Control Center. Okay. And on the other side of the VAB is the turn basin and going out to pads 39A and B. I have a question myself. What are these buildings now today? You take the bus out to Kennedy Visitors Complex, they bus you around and point out what they are. And I know you know, Terry, how they've been reconverted.
OPF 1 and 2 have been turned over to the Air Force for their X-37, and OPF 3 Boeing has for their spacecraft to go to the moon. So
The Starliner.
Starliner.
Yep.
Yes.
The Starliner is being built. That is an Orion-looking spacecraft. Both look like the Apollo Command module on steroids. So, cool. All right.
And on the east side of OPF-3 is the main engine shop. So that's where all the main engines are refurbished during the shuttle program to get them ready to be installed in the orbiters.
On the other side of the road here.
No, it's actually attached to
Oh, okay.
OPF-3.
Yeah,
the small, right there.
All
yeah,
right.
so that's the main engine shop.
Yep. Right.
Yeah.
Well, those SSMEs are right now on the Artemis SLS rocket to be launched hopefully August 29th. This is August 9th, and in 2 days we're supposed to roll that baby out to the pad. So we'll keep our fingers crossed on that. But Terry, what we're looking at this here, an aerial view, and a couple things we want to talk about. One is, which orbiter is it?
Yeah, well, that one's easy. That is Columbia.
Now, how do you know that's Columbia?
People want to know, how can you tell at a distance and that you can't see the name and that? Well, before the very first flight of Columbia, STS-1, there was a concern about the temperature difference between the upper wing and the lower wing on re-entry. So right before we were getting ready to roll out of the OPF, they came and said, hey, you got to paint the upper wing glove, the leading part of the wing, black so that we can preheat it before re-entry by rolling it toward the sun.
Can you point that out, Marty?
So Columbia was the only orbiter that got its upper wing painted black. Yep, right there. Yeah. And we didn't paint any of the others.
Right there.
Yeah.
And you call that part of the wing next to the fuselage?
We call it the wing glove.
The wing glove.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And after flight, they realized by looking at the temperatures and that, because Columbia was the most instrumented orbiter we had, that it wasn't necessary, so we did not do that modification to any of the rest of them, but we still had to maintain that for the life of Columbia.
It makes sense, but I've not heard it put that way, Terry, that Columbia had more instrumentation. Of course, it's the first maiden bird and all that stuff. You wanted to have sensors wherever you could put them, I guess, huh?
Yes.
Now, so there's a big slice, Marty, above in this building there for the rudder to get through. What, NASA was saving some money and didn't want to build a full garage door?
No, well, there are some very big garage doors anyway, but had to make a special door for the vertical stabilizer to clear. Remember, we are in a hurricane-prone area, so the huge big doors have to withstand a full Category 5 hurricane, so they didn't want to make the doors that much taller when you only needed a small door to clear the vertical.
Very good.
Same thing when you go over to the VAB. When it goes into the building, there is a raised portion to clear the vertical stabilizer when you take an orbiter in over there.
And we'll see some pictures of that in a few minutes. You heating, ventilating, and air conditioning people out there, and there's got to be a few of you involved in that business. Look on the side there of the massive, because you see the people there, Marty. Point out a couple of them little ants there that are people. Could be you, but there's the people, and then go up above to the HVAC unit. On the side of the building there.
There's people all over.
But no, he wants you to go up to the AC unit, so just go up right there.
He was showing off the people there.
Yeah, so there are huge air conditioning units to keep the thing. We had to maintain certain temperatures for the orbiter all the time, so it had an extremely large HVAC system in that. But we also have, because of the hazardous fuels and oxidizers on the vehicle, we had a huge exhaust system that if we ever had a spill in there, a way to get all of the fumes and that out of the building. So that was in that area as well. And then it went to special scrubbers in the backyard.
Wow. So you don't think about that, the volatile fuels and so forth on there, if they would have an accident. And I'm not going to put you on the spot. I've never read in the news. It seems like you have an excellent safety record in these buildings.
Excellent. Yeah. So.
Well, To get them from the runway to the OPF, you just hook it up to a tow truck and move it, right? 100 tons you're moving.
It's not quite that simple, but yeah, that's the basic philosophy. After landing and it's safe to get around, then we get any live experiments off of the vehicle after we get the astronauts off, of course, and then start taking out some of the experiments that were in the crew module and that, get them out. And then when the vehicle is safe and ready to roll, then we hook it up to a tug and tow it from the runway, down the towway, back to the orbiter processing facility.
And here we end up.
And here we are coming into orbiter processing facility number 2. You can see all the HVAC system is hooked up there. That's a mobile HVAC unit.
The red hoses there.
Yeah, that's supplying the air conditioning to the forward, mid, and aft. Right now there are 2 spacecraft operators, technicians, that are inside the orbiter because it is still powered up post-landing, but they're in there operating the controls. They're the people that operate the vehicle through all of its testing, because the astronauts aren't around to do this. They are the people that sit in the astronaut seats and run all the controls, run all the tests, and post-landing, we close them up in there, and they're stuck in there until we get the orbiter into the hangar, spotted in the right location, and lift it up to its maintenance position. Then we can open the side hatch and swap them out for 2 other spacecraft operators.
Well, if you'd bring us one of those on Stay Curious someday, we'd love to talk to them. So 3 hoses to go to the end, the middle, and the nose of the orbiter, because there's a lot of electronics in there, and electronics means heat.
Yes.
And the doors are closed. Okay.
The payload bay doors are closed.
Payload bay doors are closed, so that creates more heat inside the anything you'd have in there.
Yeah, and you know, just like the other parts of the orbiter, you have requirements to maintain certain temperatures when it's on the ground. So
we landed at 3:00 this afternoon, Terry. What's the hour timeline to get it in the building? I know you probably want to do it quickly because of this active machine. You got to get experiments out. You got to get those payload bay doors open, probably.
Yeah, but like I said, it takes several hours at the runway to get everything safe. But as soon as it's safe, we tow it back at walking speed, because we have people walking with the orbiter all the way back. And then we stop outside before we're actually going into the hangar and change out the spacecraft operators and put 2 more spacecraft operators inside. And then we tow it inside, and then now becomes the big job of spotting it exactly where it needs to go, because there is very little clearance between the orbiter and the structure, but it has to be in the right location for all of the support equipment to hook up to it properly. So it takes several hours to get it in. Then we go through a process of hooking up the jacks and that to actually lift the orbiter up. It's hard to believe, but in the early days, they did not envision the type of processing it would take. But in the early days, the jacks were operated by hand, a small hand-operated pump to jack this 100-ton spacecraft up to where it belonged at the maintenance height, and then we fastened it in the right location. And then we started lowering all the platforms around it so we could access it. But once we get it in and into position, there's only 6-inch clearance around this vehicle in most locations.
Well, wow, we'll see a couple pictures of that. And
Yep.
I got a couple questions. One is the smells inside. I'm always interested in the smells of space, or what the orbiter have an odor, for better of it when it came back.
It did when we were working on it, but when it came back, remember, you just had a crew of people that were closed up in there for an extended period of time without showers. They do have the ability to clean themselves well, but it still builds up a smell, just like if you went to a high school locker room and you hadn't been to one in a long time. Yeah, when you walk in, it kind of hits you. So yeah, the first person to open that hatch, the astronauts, the smell is slowly changed, but whoever opens up that hatch initially out there at the runway, it's strong.
You open it up with your head the other way, I understand. How about any smells of the metal being exposed to space and outgassing or anything like that? No.
I never noticed that, but remember, we don't get around it right away. We have to make sure there's nothing leaking that would harm anyone. But I've never noticed any unusual smell
Okay.
from the orbiter. You're sitting outside in a runway and in the middle of
Yeah,
Florida, and so
You're smelling the salt air. Well, this is a famous photograph. Tell us what this is.
okay.
Terry.
This is the initial roll-in 1979 of Columbia coming from Palmdale, California, where it had been built. You can see a lot of olive green areas on it. Those are areas where they had not completed all of the tile work, the TPS, the thermal protection system on the outside of the orbiter. But this is when it initially came here, and it's rolling into OPF-1, because in those days, OPF-1 was the only facility capable of working on an orbiter.
You said that was Easter weekend?
Yes.
All right. Now, this is a 360, kind of a weird looking photograph, but Terry's going to explain to us what this is.
Okay, this is going into OPF-2. It kind of in the right center is the
Those are the
entrance
doors.
and exits, and that's when it comes in. This entire hangar is positive air pressure.
Circle
so when-
those entrance and exits, Marty, would you please, in front of the black
Yeah. So
patches with
as you
the
come into this
stripes
door,
around 'em.
when it opens, you
Thank
get a
you,
big
sir.
rush of air because, like I say, it's positive, and the whole hangar inside is a clean room environment.
Hmm.
So, but
bunny
you
suits and
well, bunny suits are in the crew module where the astronauts will be eventually, and in the payload bay. But in the hangar, it's not. It's just a visibly clean environment. It's not.
how about your feet, Marty? Did you have a tacky floor?
We had tacky mats before you went inside the orbiter.
Okay, all right. So what's above your head there? The OPF-2 and the American flag and all.
Okay. Yeah. In the shift over to the left photo, and that's the operations desk and the American flag. And if you can barely look through the structure, you can actually see part of the orbiter behind it. So
And tell us the USA, what that stands for.
United Space Alliance. So it started out as Rockwell International built the orbiters, and they processed them for 5 years. And then Lockheed took over the contract, and then Lockheed merged with Martin and became Lockheed Martin. And then eventually USA took over the contract.
And we've talked to our astronaut friend Jim Adamson, who was involved with the merger, creating the United Space Alliance. And the USA acronym disappeared from the shuttles all of a sudden,
Yeah.
correct? We used to
Yes.
have the United States of America,
Yeah.
USA, on the shuttles. And when USA became the contractor, they took that off the shuttles, am I right?
The USA emblem was still
Yeah.
on there? I don't think so. I think it's still on there. Yeah.
Anyway, kind of an odd picture to show you the ground floor of walking into one of these OPFs. Is that a monitor in the center there?
Yes.
A security monitor?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
It's people don't believe it, but there was 700 cameras out at the Space Center. So I could go look at the TV at my office and I could look down inside the vehicle where the cameras are on people that are working. I could watch them work. I could check on things that were going on out at the pad. I could check on traffic. I could
Wow.
check the surf.
Was that kind of an innovation for its time that, or did other companies go to?
No,
Surveillance.
that's been surveillance. It was just that, well, you had a lot of people that weren't authorized to go in. You had payload customers that couldn't go up in the payload bay, but they wanted to see when we were working on their payloads and that, so they could just go bring it up on a monitor and watch it. So,
All right, so it served a double purpose, security as well as information.
yeah, and I could look right over a tech's shoulder without them even knowing it.
Now, and they knew it eventually when
Yeah.
when they got that written report from you for what they were doing. This gives you a great idea of what Terry was talking about, having the tight quarters in there. So proceed, sir. What are we looking
Okay,
at here?
this is one where the orbiter is ready for flight. So we've been
How do you know that?
One second.
Yeah.
We've been disassembling the orbiter after we got it inside, taking out the payload, like I say, removing all the hazards and starting all the servicing work of download. Then we start the upload. We start installing all the things for the new payload. If it's a horizontal payload, it actually goes into the vehicle in the orbiter processing facilities. If it's a vertical payload designed to go in out at the launch pad, we would still put all the interfaces in to support the payload and test them in that. But we do everything in there. We change tires, we clean windows, we change windows. We do a minimum of 5 inspections on the whole outside of the orbiter. We're constantly inspecting the inside. We're running test after test. We're lucky we don't have to clean the waste management system, which we call the potty, but we do physically have to remove it from the ship and put it in a special container and ship it to our friends in the great state of Texas. I always like to thank Texans for cleaning our potty after every flight. So,
Okay.
but yeah, this is showing it's ready for flight. It is sitting on the orbiter transport system. It's a special 72-tired vehicle that we actually set the orbiter on. We attach it to it at the same 3 spots it's going to attach to the external tank in the VAB. And then we close the landing gear and roll it out on that special vehicle and take it over to the VAB and then lift it with a huge crane 525 feet in the air and lower it down to the mate to the rest of the vehicle.
One day we're going to have Terry tell us about the special whisk brooms that are used for the landing gear.
Terry,
Yes.
you want to explain that they're backing it out? And
Yes.
you want to point out the platforms?
Yeah. And then on the platforms on the side, these were all lowered down and closed along the orbiter that as I mentioned earlier in the show. But right now they are taking it out backwards. It comes in nose first and it goes out tail first. So they're going to back it out on that special transporter and then a few photo ops outside, and then they make the several 100-yard trip over to the vehicle assembly building or vertical assembly building and roll it inside there and then start hooking it up for its lift.
Talking a little bit of the maintenance that's done there. Man, I didn't know that you took the potty out and sent it to Houston and back. That's interesting. But here's another component that was removed and put back in.
Yes. Yeah, the work we did in the OPF, it took us several days to get 200 doors and panels off of the aft section of the orbiter so that we could remove the 3 main engines. We took them out after each flight and sent them over to the main engine shop, which I mentioned earlier, and they refurbished the engines. It took several days to get everything disconnected, but we pulled 3 engines in one day, and then when we were ready with all of our other work inside and the 3 engines were ready, we would bring 3 engines back and install them in one day. We always installed engine 1 first because we never wanted to lift an engine above an engine.
So 1 is at the top of the pyramid.
Yes,
up
it
there.
is. Yep.
Okay. And then how'd it go, clockwise or counterclockwise? Marty, your engine's there. 2 is
That's 1, that's 2,
okay.
that's 3.
All right.
You may want to point out the Ohms RCS engines.
Yeah, there's 2 smaller engines up there. That's part of the orbiter maneuvering system, what we call the OHM system, and that's the part that maneuvers them in space. It has 32 thrusters. There's 16 more up front in what's called the forward reactionary control system, but they use the hypergol fuels. But yeah, those engines are really important when it comes time to come home, because that's what the astronauts fire to slow the orbiter down. It's going around the Earth at 17,500 miles an hour, and you slow it down by 200 miles per hour to 17.3, and Mother Nature, called gravity, starts bringing you home.
That's all. Just 200 miles an hour slower, and then you're
gonna
coming back.
Turn you up and around backwards.
Yes, yep.
Yeah. These are the greatest engines ever made. 3 times 135 engines on 135 flights. That's 405 flights of an SSME with only 1 failure in the 30-year history. And that's an incredible record for these engines. And there you see them taken out in the upper top up there. Yes, Marty?
To multiply each engine by 8 minutes and 30 seconds and get you.
Yeah. Marty says multiply that 405 by 8 minutes and 30 seconds, then you get a tremendous hours of unblemished flight for these. at the bottom, this white thing. Tell us what that is, and there's a unique
That-
story
that-
about
yeah,
Columbia.
that white
Channel-
thing is just a light cover over the body flap. The Orbiter is the only aircraft type vehicle that has a very large body flap to help control it through its mission and that. And we had an issue with Challenger where we had to remove over 4,000 tile when we thought we were getting close to finishing processing the Orbiter before we could go fly. We had to remove and replace them because the waterproofing we were using on the tiles was causing the thick adhesive underneath to go soft. Well, the body flap had a lot of thick adhesive on it, so they wanted us to remove the tiles off the body flap, and they decided, well, Atlantis is being built in California and its body flap is complete, so we'll bring Atlantis's body flap to KSC, install it on Challenger. We'll send Challenger's body flap to California. They can remove and replace the tiles out there, and we can continue to process. And at a later date, when we have Challenger and Atlantis in the hangars at the same time, we'll go ahead and swap them back. Well, as we know from history, we lost Challenger before we ever got the chance to swap them back. So Atlantis does have Challenger's body flap on it today.
Absolutely interesting. In fact, I was at KSC today and had took a peek at mighty Atlantis up there. It's just so beautiful the way it's displayed at an angle like it's coming in for a landing. So, well, that's a neat little story there about parts. Now, this is not in the OPF.
Okay, in earlier days when we only had 2 hangars, we were constantly shuffling orbiters around. We'd get one back from space, and you have to get it into a hangar and get it deserviced as soon as possible. So we would take one of the orbiters that we'd been working on, take it over and store it on the ground floor of the vehicle assembly building. So this is one taking it into one of the 2 high bays on the west side of the vehicle assembly building.
Just we got that space. Let's park it over there for a few days, right?
Yep. And you can see a good shot of the engines here. You can see the body flap under the engines, but yeah.
Was there special security or
The standard security for that, but we did have people that stayed and monitored it 24/7. So.
And when you see the cone on the back of the engines,
Okay.
there, what's that tell
Well,
us?
that's the tail cone assembly. That is put on an orbiter that lands out at Edwards Air Force Base in California before they put it on the 747 because the turbulence coming off of that orbiter disrupts the tail of the 747. So that's the tail cone assembly. I don't recall exactly why. Usually when we brought it back from California, we would get it into one of the OPFs to remove the tail cone and that. But here looks like they're parking it in the VAB probably till we get one down on its wheels and brought over to the VAB where we can get that one in and get the tail cone off.
Who is the traffic controller of all this? To say, hey, we got this process. We got another.
There is a whole flow management system, and that is their job to shuffle things around. So our job is just to jack it up, let it down, move it in, move it out, fasten this on, fasten that. So
they tell you what to do and when to
they
do
tell
it.
us what they want, and then
Actually, that does look like Terry, Marty, going across the. You've had white hair like me for a long time.
since I was 21.
Since you're 21, holy cow! But yeah, that is the vehicle assembly building there in there. Well, we've enjoyed this conversation with Terry White, and we're going to do this once a month, so you're just going to hear some fascinating stories like you heard today. Hope Jackie Garner enjoyed today's show. Keith Sewell, an astronomy friend of mine, I'm sure he enjoyed it. Rebecca Vicknar, thank you for 200 stars, contributing to our... you know Rebecca?
That's my daughter.
Oh, that's your daughter.
Yeah,
Okay.
she's in Louisiana.
Well, hello there in Louisiana. Thank you very much. And your son, Travis, is in Afghanistan, enjoying an evening watching Stay Curious with your buddies. We appreciate that. Tom and Mark Usiak photographed over 60 shuttle launches. I believe you met them.
Yep.
Time or two. Robert Law is up there in Dundee, Scotland. So tell us who else we got there watching today. Terry?
Looks like William Whitnick.
Whiting, yeah.
Or Whiting,
He
okay.
asked a question about the personality
That's
of the
right.
shuttles.
Pamela Shivak.
Shivik.
yeah.
Yep. She's a
M-
Buckeye friend of mine.
Oh,
Does
okay.
a lot of astronomy.
Yep. Melissa Pope.
Hi, Melissa, at the Space Coast Office of Tourism.
Yeah, Paul Forrester.
Yep.
And the last one is, I'll let you say that one.
Marissa Krasinski. And we appreciate you all watching there. And Angela Zorans is watching and staying curious with us today. So,
Hi, Angela.
yeah, we appreciate you all enjoying this wonderful insight to what is an unequaled chapter of American history, not just space history, because the benefits of this shuttle, even though it last flew 11 years ago, are still permeated in our society, aren't they?
Everything in your day-to-day life is a spin-off from space.
You better believe that. But so here's a great picture that you sent me. There's an orbiter, the belly of it being towed somewhere, but off in the distance, Terry, what's going on there? It looks like we've got, a traffic jam.
Yeah, there
outside the
are
OPS.
times when we backed one out and was pulling another one in, so there was a nose-to-nose confrontation in the towway.
Well, who won?
Well, somebody just gets to sit while the other one moves. So.
Right. Well, what are those yellow things on top of the payload bay?
Okay.
Doors.
Remember that the vehicle is extremely lightweight, while the payload bay doors are very lightweight, and they are designed to operate in space, so they cannot support themselves here on the ground. They have extremely small motors that operate them. So we have to put huge steel strongbacks that we bolt to the doors, and then we use a special crane system to open and close the doors when we're in the orbiter processing facility. They also use those out at the launch pad to open the doors out there when they're doing work on the payloads. So that one just has the strongbacks. There was no need to remove the strongbacks to take it outside. So I would guess the one on the left is the one probably coming from the runway, and this one was get out of the way.
Get out of the way. I believe it was Atlantis and Endeavor meeting here.
It could be.
In there on a beautiful Florida sunny day there. And just an odd shot that we hope many of you haven't seen this sort of picture in there. But Terry, we really appreciate you. Here you are at work with a couple of your buddies there. Tell us about them.
Yeah, that's Jimmy Carter on the left, me, and then Charlie Romeo. They're two techs I worked with for many years. Jimmy goes all the way back to 1979, but excellent guys, and they were on runway ops with me that day, checking out the orbiter when it landed. And Charlie was a tech who became a engineer, so he's out there doing the initial inspection of the vehicle. We did a quick look out there to make sure there was no problem, because sometimes we would have another vehicle out at the pad a few days from launch, and we wanted to make sure there was no issue that would delay launch.
Very interesting there. Marty's got a little note here for me. Thank you, Marty, for a good show today. Amanda and her boys say, "Hey, Uncle Terry."
Yep.
So,
hey, hi guys. So that's my
that's
niece,
what your uncle's done, folks.
niece and her three boys down in Fort Lauderdale.
Well, you white family, we consider your dad, your uncle, your grandpa to be a national treasure, just like Marty Winkle. You all have done jobs that no one else has done in our American society. And the impact still lives on. Here you are. You haven't changed much in 11 years, my friend, but
No.
that's in July 2011 when you've got a shirt there that signifies the Alpha and the Omega.
Yep,
of our
STS-1 and
program.
STS-135. So
In there. So thank you, Terry, for what an interesting show today. You have anything to add before we say goodbye to our listeners today?
no, it's just a pleasure to pass on some of my knowledge to everyone out there who has an interest in space and an interest in the space shuttle.
Well, we appreciate you, and we appreciate everybody out there that enjoys our program and supports the American Space Museum. Again, get your T-shirts there to remind you. You can go to the. I'll put this up at the top of our Facebook page so you can get the order number there, or contact us here and we'll take good care of you. So, Terry, thank you for a great program. Marty, thank you for excellent work on your arrows today and passing on a great program here for our Stay Curious watchers. Terry, thank you again. We can't wait to have you
Thanks.
back next month to help everyone stay curious. Until then, I'm Mark Marquette saying that we will see you tomorrow to bridge the space between us.